You're all very welcome. So the idea tonight is just to kind of review TEG and tell you a little bit about it. Um, See if you're interested, how pretty much hopefully answer any questions you might have about it. I said I wouldn't do a PowerPoint, but I couldn't resist.
Mhm.
I didn't do a PowerPoint, but I did put a little PDF together. So I'm going to just share that and run through that very quickly. And then hopefully by the end, some of you know nothing maybe about tech. Some of you already know quite a lot. Some of you did courses with me before. And then by the end, you'll be able to, we'll have questions and so on. So, anyways, so TEG, which is a nice little acronym. Teastas Certificate, Eorpach, European, sa Gaeilge in Irish, European Certificate in Irish. And it's based on this other system like the CEFR. Some of you might have heard of that before if you studied any other languages. So this is a common European framework of reference. Anything coming from the EU is going to be a mouthful. So basically, that's what this is. It's just a way to standardize kind of so that somebody who might have a certain level in French, who's able to order a cup of coffee in French or German or Spanish, they're able to greet people, say hello. They're able to maybe say a little bit about themselves. You might say they have an A1 standard, and we can match that up across all the different European languages. And Irish is, has been structured under that system as well. And the University of Maynooth is the Irish centre that has sort of standardised Irish and set out a syllabus and then sets exams every year to measure, at the different levels. So it starts kind of when we hear A normally, we normally think of A as being the highest standard of something, but it's counterintuitive, right? It goes from A being the basic. A1 is we have a basic user up to A2. So both A1 and A2 are kind of beginner level. And then we move into the intermediate levels, B1 and B2. And B1 is already a good, solid level of language, of knowledge of a language. B2, you're well able to cope. You can kind of throw yourself into lots of situations, turn on the TV, the radio, and really get most of what's being said. And by the time you go up to C1, uh, somebody could give a presentation in the language perhaps. And then there's also a C2, but in Ireland we don't have a C2 exam at all. It just goes to C1. But of course there are C2 level speakers out there as well. So that is a brief overview. My courses start with A2 because A1 is very basic. Anybody really who's thinking of looking at TEG, they've probably already done a couple of beginner courses. So now they might be ready to start preparing themselves for the A2 level. Um, and then the moving up then to the B1, kind of a nice intermediate level. So that is the first thing. So this is what it's all about. We have different levels, and the exams are held every year for each of these levels. Um, okay, what else do I have here? I'm wondering, is this the right way to do this now? To throw you all straight into talking about exams? It's rather off-putting, isn't it? Um, I'll tell you first of all maybe why I started teaching the TEG syllabus because each of the exams has a syllabus that's set down by the university in Maynooth. Well, when I started teaching, first of all, I was kind of anti the idea of exams. I didn't really like the idea of it. I'm like, oh no, I'd rather just do stories with people and poems and maybe, well, actually, I kind of tell a lie there. I love teaching grammar, actually, as anyone who's come to any of my classes knows. So I do that as well. But I had one student and he said, I really, really want to do an exam. And I said, okay. He said, I've gone and entered the A2 exam. And I was helping this particular student one to one kind of. And I thought, okay, he's fine, Grant. And then I looked at the A2 paper and I realized, my God, there's a bit more in this than I thought. And I had to start to prepare material for him. And then just seeing how well he progressed, that actually the goal of having the exam and having really set thing to work towards, even if it meant a good bit of cramming maybe in the last month. He did far more in those few months preparing for the exam and then in maybe a whole year or two before that, where you're kind of dabbling in and out. And I will say that he enjoyed that. That for some people it's nice to have a goal. Not for everybody, but he enjoyed having a goal, set the exam and did very well. And then it was like, okay, now I want to do B1. So it really is a way to push yourself a little bit. It's like as if you were training for a run or something, and you're just like, oh, I'm going to get fit. And then somebody says, well, you know what? stop the talk now. There's a 10K on in 3 months' time. Will you enter that? And then you're like, okay, I'll enter that 10K race. And then you will probably get fit. Okay, so that's the kind of idea behind the TEG. Um, why it might be sometimes a good idea to sit an exam just for yourself. Okay, so then the other thing about TEG, just before we move on to like stuff about the other good thing about TEG is that it's really based around communication. So everyday topics, so that you're able to talk about things like where you live, travel, work, useful stuff. So people, from school might remember doing some poems and literature and so on, and that is really nice as well, and it has its place. But TEG is really focused on communication for everyday life. So it's useful, And then the other thing about TEG is the dialects. The question about the dialects. So TEG is set up by the University of Maynooth for the whole country. So obviously, when they set an exam, they have to pick a dialect. They have to kind of keep it fair so that the person with the Munster Irish isn't penalised if you do everything through Connacht Irish or Ulster Irish. So the exam system is set up so that, say, for example, in the listening part of the exam, you will be listening to a piece to an Ulster Irish speaker, a Connacht speaker, and a Munster speaker. So we have to cater for all of that within, for studying for a TEG exam, which means you become familiar with them all, you get used to them, you kind of are no longer frightened about them. You understand the differences between the dialects. Some people are so, I don't know where this has come from, but like this fear that's put into people that they might mix it up and cause offense and all this kind of thing. And that's just out the window if you go through the TEG system because you kind of start to understand that the dialects, the differences between them. And they're not as many as it might seem at the start. So I think that's very useful actually this way that the dialects all come through the TEG system. Okay. Any questions actually at this point? Or will I?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
How do they handle the dialect side of it on the written papers?
Well,
Um,
yeah, that's a good question, Terry. So dialects really only come into play more so in spoken Irish. Okay. So most
mhm,
written material in Irish is written in standard Irish. So
yeah.
although somebody might say, for example, in Connemara, you might say, just trying to think of something now. Gair. No, that's not. No,
Mm.
that's not a good example. You might say Oitichi or Scullany for
Oh,
schools.
yeah, yeah.
Scullany. You wouldn't write that unless you're deliberately trying to write in Connacht Irish. You're not going to write Scullany. Scullany and Chanters, the schools of the area. You'd write Scullana, the standard form. So in
Mhm.
written Irish, Terry, pretty much, unless somebody's deliberately choosing to write in a particular dialect, written Irish will be done in standard Irish. So that won't cause a
Mhm.
problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So
Dáma
yes.
leis céile Patricia is na
Yeah.
seantainine.
Do you have a
Um,
sense?
dúirt tú go bhfuil dialect Munster, Connacht agus Ulster. An bhfuil dialect in Leinster.
Well, Neil fwy láthir, Neil inis ar enos. There is no longer a living dialect of Leinster Irish. I think if you went back, there would have been native Irish speakers with some kind of with a Leinster dialect, but it's no longer that chain is kind of broken. So we don't really talk about there being a living Leinster dialect anymore.
Gur mágad?
Yeah, full truth. Okay, so yeah, we've gone through the different levels there. Okay, I'm going to go into the slightly boring stuff about the exam now, like the nuts and bolts of it, if you like. Another aspect about TEG is that it's focused whether you sit the exam or not. Like, but if you just follow the program, you do a good bit of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So all four skills, and of course they all help each other. So reading, of course, is going to help your speaking. Listening is going to help your speaking. Writing, I don't know, you can take it take it or leave it maybe. Do you know what I mean? But reading and listening will help your speaking so much. And writing will as well actually because it's forcing you to think maybe about and then that will because most people I think very often what we really want to improve is our speaking of the language. So but I cannot emphasize enough the importance of reading and listening to improve your spoken Irish. So TEG is good for that as well. And that means then it's broken down a little bit more emphasis on the speaking there at the A2 level. And then in B1, a little bit more is given to writing than it was at A2. Um, okay, so then in the exam itself, and there's a few people here who have actually set the A2 exam, and they're welcome to have it to tell us about their experience maybe later. The oral exam takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and then the written exam takes 2 hours. We look at a sample question now in a minute. They're not, when you look at it, you might be a little taken aback. You might think, oh gosh, that looks tough, perhaps. But at the same time, don't remember that the exam is the end goal after doing your 6 months of preparation beforehand. So if you look at the exam and you find it easy, then, you know, you maybe can aim for a higher one than what we're doing here, A2 or B1. Okay, so then the results break down. You can just see there that, like, it's not an absolute walk in the park. 1 in 4 people don't get a pass in these exams. So sometimes, and I've seen this down through the
What
years,
is
Irish can be a
this?
tick the box exercise for certain things, and people tend to be given a pass, but not with TEG, right? So you can see there that, and especially if you want to get a higher mark, a pass with distinction, you'll have to put a bit of work in. Yeah. Um, the dates of the exam for 2026 are not ready, not released just yet, but just to give you an idea, this year they were in A2 was in June and B1 was in the middle of May there. So it'll be more or less around that again. It was also held in Washington for anyone in the States. And you can choose to do either the full exam, the oral part and the written part, or you might say, I'll just do the oral part of the exam. Now, there's a thing, there is the oral exam on its own is held for B1, but there's a reason for that. And I don't know if anybody here is planning to apply for a teaching qualification next year. If you are, I can run over that maybe at the end. It's not really my main focus here at the moment, but to get into a master's to be a teacher in Ireland, you need a certain standard, and TEG is used for that to check people have the standard. Where is it held? It's held in all of these venues every year. Well, it it's you need to have at least 15 for a venue to go ahead. So for example, if you put down Tralee and there weren't 15 people in Tralee in 2026, that's unlikely because TEG is becoming more and more popular, especially because I think it's going to become more and more useful within the public sector in Ireland to see where people's standard of Irish is. So, there's a big push to promote it. So these are the centres at the moment. I'm not sure where they're held. People that have taken my course have tended to sit in Maynooth, Galway, Cork, and Cork. Yeah, they've basically been in those places, Maynooth, Galway, and Cork. Castlebar, I might have had somebody in Castlebar last year. Being an Irish state organisation, of course, you're going to be charged for sitting this exam, right? So there it goes, 120 for A2, and then when you've kind of got the bug and you want to do B1 next, they push the price up to 170. It's a good, if you're working, you could ask an employer to help you with some of that, maybe that's a possibility. So that's everything I wanted to run over. There's a good bit there now. Was there anything else? Let me see. I think I went over everything. Yeah. Um, would just are there any questions first, and then I might show you like a sample paper or have a quick look inside the course. There's a few things like that. If there's any questions about anything there, it was a fair old information dump
Tá
on my
ceist
part.
gom.
Yeah, Aberlat, James.
Mar a léamh Baudelaire, a
Yeah.
red Baudelaire.
Oh,
Bhí sé
Mahu, Intach.
bhí sé dachar ach bhí sé go húntaach.
Yeah, yeah,
Having worked through that, what
yeah,
stage on TEG should we be aiming for?
yeah. Oh yeah, okay. That's a very good point, James. Right. Ítach, Mahu. And I will say this, anybody, there's a few people here who did the Baudelaire challenge, which was reading and listening to a book over the summer. And that was a hard core book. That was not a light piece of literature, right? So well done, first of all, James. Wahoo. And by the way, just talking about Baudelaire, it won the Irish Language Book of the Year there last Tuesday, just so you know. So yeah. But yeah. So the point is, people can sometimes say, which shall I do, A2 or B1, or will I do B1 or B2? And I always think you're better to aim really high and get a very high mark at the lower level, that rather than, so you have a choice sometimes of getting a very high mark at A2, we'll say, or scraping a pass at B1. Um, so, but if anyone's really not sure which one to kind of go for, I'll arrange a chat. I can tell, I can have a chat with you maybe when you stop recording to see. Um, so I really think, somebody can say, I have A2. Oh, I've got an A2 level. But somebody with 60% in an A2 exam is not necessarily a higher level of Irish than somebody with 50% or 40% in a B1 exam, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
It's a very hard thing to judge. It's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string in a way. So there you go, James. That was a bit of a non-answer. I'm aware of that. So, but we can chat further, I think would be the best
Well,
thing
be
to
an
do
ceis
there.
céine gomsa
Yeah,
manta leis an bhfuil céine ceocha chósa
yeah,
chuné aráú ceocha
yeah.
ceann. Tá gá ceann ar siúla gosa. So
Tá.
ceocha ceann is fear lumsa cosúla James.
Yeah.
Níl
Well,
san fós.
Beidir a rud gur fear a dhéana ná súla chatha ar na pápéir scrúdathe. Look at the exam papers. I'll also say that with my courses, definitely if you're going to do the standard version, you can move between them. If you're thinking of doing the one with the live class, well then we'll have a chat to make sure you go for the right one. So we'd have just a chat between ourselves. Because otherwise I'll be doing a scrúdú kainte on you just now, Donald, and this
Tá
vision.
gom, tá
Oh,
gom.
oh, wow, that vision, you make into. But yeah, yeah. So it's a good question, but um, definitely, I'm very much of the belief that you're better to aim, get a really high mark in A2, and it means you go into B1, or it could be B1 into B2, whichever way it is. I'm not saying, I'm not prejudging. It means you go into the next one with a great confidence and a great confidence boost. Whereas, like, if somebody scrapes a pass at B1, then or A2, and then they're like, oh, will I go on to B1 now or not? Whereas, yeah. So, so found back a minute. Yeah, Keshwa. So I think with anybody who's unsure which level you're at, I would say just send me an email and let me know what you've done. And if you want, we'll have a chat on Zoom, maybe for 10 minutes, and I can help you decide. And some people like to push on with the higher one. Some people would rather take their time with the lower one. So, Brahan Aaron Dinner freshen. It kind of depends on the personal choice as well. Okay, ein cheistela again then. Well, ein cheistela. Immersion. Okay, we'll move on. So I just thought I might show you sample papers or a few bits and pieces. But let's see now. Where will we start? I have a few different tabs open here. Um, I'm going to say before I open an exam paper, I don't want to frighten anybody. Don't forget, this is what you're aiming for after you've put the work in. This is not for now. Okay, so wherever you're at, and you're all at different levels here or whatever. So some of you maybe it'll be easy. It'll look easy. Some it won't. Are you looking now? Is everybody looking now at the A2 sample paper on the screen? Great.
Yeah,
You touch it,
Oh,
yeah.
tá Sean. Yeah.
Iontach.
yeah.
Yeah. So even like you might be looking at that in itself and going, "Oh my God, I can't barely read the cover of it." Like, who knows? Don't stress over any of this now. Um, okay. So it starts off with a Pluas Tishkent, a listening exam. And the first thing we need, so a lot of the answers at A2 level are, multiple choice. And sometimes it's just a question of like you might not even understand everything that's said, but you pick out the word egmuna and you have the answer or it could be a process of elimination. So you can see there, the listening part actually might go down to and a lot of it is multiple choice again. True, false, it doesn't say. Tá pus lán aimsere ag Rita. Rita has a full-time job. And then this again is you're listening to Rita and Sean talking to each other. Into the reading then, this, these are kind of tricky, actually. So you've got to work your way, process. There's more answers here, and you have to fill in the right one up here and make a coherent conversation out of it. Um, the one thing about the exam is there is a good bit of time. So generally you wouldn't be under time pressure. So you can take your time with it. And you can guess as well. And you can do process of elimination and that kind of thing. So that's a reading question. And again, multiple choice kind of questions. But you can see they're all about everyday sort of stuff. Is he an athletic person? Um, did you meet her before? Did you meet Katrina before? Do you not like meat? You know, it's very much useful conversational stuff. And then you can see here, this piece is quite long. So, you know, you look at that, you might go, oh God, like, but again, it's a question of picking out the right bits of information. And you'll have had 6 months kind of doing little exercises like this to build you up to it. So that would be the A2 example paper. And then we look at a B1 now. Again, well, you can see here it's not really, we don't have a multiple choice maybe as much. What's the name of the CD? Who will be going on a trip to America? So that's it. So there's all the listening there, and then you come down to the reading. Again, there's a multiple choice. The vocabulary would be a little bit more expansive, and sentences will be a little bit longer. You can see there you have a little bit of the Mokanilach. You don't have to understand everything either, so you know you can just pick things out. That's and I'll just give you another example of a reading. And then you know, again, you have got lots of practice reading things like this during the 6 months before it. And so on. Okay. Yeah, so there's a mixture there, multiple choice and that. That's a B1 paper. This is, you know, long, see longer passages. That's quite long now. And God, that's very long. But, you know, it's a case of, well, obviously, where is she from? So you just go back to whichever. But again, you have a good bit of time to answer these questions. And I'll stop sharing that. Let me see. So I might show you now inside of, we'll say, the A2 course first. I'm going to show you. Oh yeah, one more thing. So this is the website for TEG, teg.ie, which is Maynooth University run this. And it has a lot of information. It has a lot of materials here as well for each of the different levels. So, you know, you can do a lot of this stuff yourselves. But I've taken a few things that are useful here and put them into the course and so on. So it's kind of organized maybe a little bit better. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to look into the A2 course now. So you can see these are the topics that are all based on the TEG syllabus. Very much day-to-day kind of discussion topics, the weekends, drinking food and so on. Every one of these is broken into four parts. Now, you won't get all of the topics in one big dump or anything like that. When we start off in the month of November, we might do 3 topics, and in December, we'll do the next 2. So you sort of take your time with it and you work your way through it, you know, but you can get at them whenever you want, but bit by bit. So we're looking at Corsi Ibra here. Work matters. So a store focal, so the video, anything that comes up that's relevant. There's a Cora section. I'll just show you one of these. So these are taken directly from the TEG website. So these will give you an example of the level that we'd be aiming for. And what we have in the A2 course is, I might play a little bit. You can listen, but you can listen and read at the same time. So you can, yeah, just play a second. Oh, can you hear what kind of Irish that is?
Don't know.
Really Ulster Irish, isn't it?
Right.
Well, Gaeilge. Yeah, couple of shock nothing. And then I think it's no, so I mean, but here and there in the video I'll point out, you know, there's something that's very relevant that we haven't come across that's to do with whatever. Let's see what this is. So you can see there like things that are quite relevant to Ulster where they might say Intach instead of being she an Gnohak. Things like that will be pointed out, and then we'll see. We'll see what this one is.
Chris.
So we have a Munster speaker here. Yeah, and so on. I leave that. So that would be, you also have a Bilog Ibra. This might look like a good bit of stuff, but you can just take your time with it, you know. And the Bilog Ibra, where is it gone? Is it opening for me there? Oh, maybe I'll come back to that and look at it. So these are little worksheets that you can do. How Good. I was slightly afraid if I hit close on that, I'd close everything. Okay. And then quizzes. So you can do the quiz here. Like, let's see, quiz. Start. Are you unemployed? Okay. Bhfuil tú díostathe, bhfuil tú féinostathe, bhfuil postagad, bhfuil tú ar scar. So these are things you come across at the A2 level. I'll just see what else is in the A2 course. So we have our 14 topics at A2 level, and then there's a little bit about each of the 4 parts of the exam, videos and so on. But I'm not going to talk about them right now. More just to show you how relevant the topics are actually. That you can talk about your holidays, you can talk about asking permission, different things like that. And then just at the very end here, there's a few little extra bits. You're just listening and reading again. So you'd be listening to one of the Clondeer, a Finchgale, and a legend from this book, and you'd be listening to, I think, 1 or 2 chapters of this book as well, and just to get in the habit. And it's more like courses are great online and so on, and they can give you a bit of direction. But the thing which is really great, is to be reading ourselves maybe, and to be listening and watching stuff on TG Caher and all of that. So that's the thing. Okay, we might move into the B1 course. It follows the same layout, but obviously the topics are getting a little bit more, the vocabulary is getting richer. I bring up certain grammatical points, they'll be slightly more complicated, a bit more about the couple, a bit more about the Tishel Gindach, things like that. But they come up within the topics. So there's no need to be put off by that. I wanted to look at a Cora in this one, because you can see these are done a little bit differently. In this one, you don't listen. Was that an A2 one? No, I mean B1. Oh, all right, okay. Tá sé fós an sin. There's no ní léon Verla an sin. Tuair sé bheith sin faoi deara. There's no English on that. But then you have the download has English on it. So Irish and English if you need it. And again, always like trying to point out as we go through this course, the Munsterisms that come up in these dialects, or whatever comes up is pointed out. Useful phrases. Ruddy immersion. Ken Choy is the sign of a Connacht speaker. Yeah, ruddy beag immersion. An é sin é. Okay, bhfuil é cheist faoi aon rud an sin. Ní cheist.
An level, oh no, Tá faoi an level B2.
Bídó, yeah, well, ní réon cuasa bídó agam, ach ag leibhéil bídó tá sé níos deocra a rís, níos deocra, more difficult. Is féidir le duine a scrúdú sinna dhéine, ach ní mór go leor staidir a dhéine don cheann sin. You have to put a good bit of time in to be prepared for that one, depending where your starting point is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
níl cuasa agat le haig.
Ní léon cuasa agam do bídó. Fós ar énos.
Okay.
Mar bhealach ceappa me go buinte sin, má bhín bí a héin ag duine, ba cheart go maiid siad an ná staidir a dhéine as a stúm héin.
Yeah.
Mae siad a fólam a bheith léh, a bheith géisteach le Gaeilge, béidir go mai ranganí go má ó héh crinneiste, ach dar a bheith nasú go mai siad cin an neamhsplach ó héh fólamde. So you'd hope at B2 people are more independent learners, that they can really learn from reading and writing, and maybe they might want a little bit of help here and there with crinnes, which is like, what's crinnes in English? Like correctness, grammatical accuracy. Yeah, ruddy immersion. But really B2, I think you hopefully can start learning yourself. I might stop recording here because I think we've covered kind of everything. But we can stay here and answer any more questions. So I'm just going to hit stop on the recording.